Hi, I'm Christine Dufond, and I'm a marriage and family therapist in Sebastopol, California, which is Northern California. And my specialty is couples work, and I also have a specialty in soul work. And part of the reason for that is that in my study of couples work and all the research that I did actually beyond graduate school, I discovered that conscious love is actually a path to awakening, which is also part of soul work. Soul work leads to awakening. So it really all goes hand in hand. And I was going to continue to talk about something I touched on in my last video, which was the four tools for couples. And that is how these core wounds come up in romantic love. And I'm not necessarily saying that every single relationship is one in which this happens. I mean, sometimes you've already had that relationship, you've already had your core wounds come up, and you really healed them very thoroughly. But I really do feel that even when they don't come up in a big way in the next relationship, they're probably going to resurface, maybe more subtly, or maybe in a different way. For example, the core wound of abandonment. And that is actually a core wound that I myself have had to work through, and I find that it is the case where when I'm in a new relationship, it kind of peeks its little head. It's even though I did, a lot of work with it and I'm really securely attached, I'm no longer an anxiously attached individual, which is the kind of attachment style you get whenever you have abandonment trauma, until you've healed it sufficiently enough to become securely attached. And that's what you really, what we're all striving for with couples therapy. If we are either anxiously attached or avoidantly attached, is to come into secure attachment. And typically what I find in the process with couples is that they may not even realize that, the terrible arguments they keep getting into, what's really driving the pattern is this underlying fear of abandonment, because they have this core wound from usually their upbringing. Sometimes in a previous romantic relationship, you get a core wound and you carry it into the next relationship. That's the other thing that can happen. But typically, if you go back to the original source, it does start with either one or both of your primary nurturers, mom or dad. And typically, and it's not that we're blaming our parents. It's definitely, we all have good enough parents. But it's just important for you to understand that we really are all our own best nurturer. So in healing the core wound of abandonment, for example, you would want to understand that the corrective experience that you're looking for is not going to come from outside of yourself. And that's what conscious love really does show you. It teaches you that, yes, you are going to probably, if you really do this the right way, have a corrective experience in your relationship if this is the partner that you're meant to, be with, to stay on course with. And to know that even if it doesn't work out, if you're really working your end of it, if you're doing your inner work, you gave it your best shot. And, if it doesn't work out and they bail and they don't want to do the hard work of the relationship with you, then you know that it was meant to be, and that you've learned how to love yourself and nurture yourself sufficiently, and because you're doing that, the inner creates the outer. That's a spiritual law. The inner creates the outer. Actually, Jesus taught that, as well as many other spiritual leaders and teachers. And so it's really quite a beautiful process, conscious love. It really leads you to this inward journey that you kind of join with your partner in this spiritual partnership where you're both doing this inward journey and bringing your higher selves to these heart-to-heart talks that you have that I call the nurturing talk. And I have a whole protocol that I teach my couples, and I explain a lot on these videos because I really want to just share this with as many couples as possible. I know there's a real need for that right now. These are pretty challenging times that we're in, and the thing that I wanted to emphasize as well in this video is that when you really identify that core wound, and you really a lot of times it's because you're on the brink of just losing your partner. Maybe you're really, really in love, and I would say that that real love, that even it seems irrational sometimes. You're like, why should I be in this relationship? It's just dysfunctional, and sometimes it's actually even those relationships that seem sort of dysfunctional that can be a catalyst for your core wound to come up and to be healed and to awaken, because you're very motivated to do the work with somebody that you really love. And I think one of the reasons why it seems so chaotic and you get so distressed is because you are being called to face that core wound, and there's a fear of that. There's a realization that, oh my gosh, I'm being called to face it. There's a resistance because it is painful. There is pain that you go through, and that's part of how we grow and learn. And what I found was it really, it's in that, point where our hearts are just broken open, and we realize, oh my gosh, I've been holding this wound, and boy, my poor little kiddo that was abandoned emotionally back when I was 16 is just really needing my love, my support, to know that I will advocate for her, and that I'm going to make sure that we don't push her partner away with our clingy abandonment trauma, tactics that can happen, and so yeah, it was really fascinating for me when I was already working with couples to finally have that big love where I was so motivated to not push him away, and here was my abandonment trauma coming up for the first time, and I saw it right away, and I was like, oh gosh, I am not going to be that clingy partner. I am not going to be that insecure partner. And certainly with him it wouldn't have worked either. It was really what happens a lot of times is your trigger triggers their trigger, and sometimes that just seems like, oh gosh, we're bringing out the worst in each other, and actually that's not the case. I mean, if you come to me and you're in that situation, I'm going to tell you, wow, this is a perfect opportunity for an awakening for both of you, for a real deep love to blossom, actually, because you really learn to have that internal locus of control in that situation, that you cannot be driven by the actions of anyone else. You have to be strong in your core and love yourself and be grounded in that and know you're amazing. And the more you awaken, which happens whenever your heart is broken open and you're like, oh my gosh, my inner child's been in pain. What does she want to do? What does my soul want? My soul wants to dance more. It's something I love, and when I dance, I just express what I've been feeling, and I've been holding in all these emotions and this grief that needs to come out, and so that's one of the things about awakening is you need to figure out, like, what is my creative outlet. So in my process with couples and individuals, I really teach that the importance of knowing what your creative outlet is, and maybe it's something that you haven't done for years. It's a seed that needs to be watered. And when you start to do that and you put love in your own love tank, so your soul needs different things than your regular personality that you've kind of developed to survive in this society, in this culture, this very fast-paced kind of materialistic culture. And the important thing is to not neglect the needs of your own soul. Your soul needs nature. Your soul needs, all of those good things that you need to have love in your love tank. It needs quality time. It needs words of affirmation. It wants you to, like, be more in your presence with the people you love, not being on your gadgets or watching TV for quality time all the time. It's like, no, actually talking about the important things in life sometimes, going to the ocean together, not always just going shopping or, staying busy. Next project, it's like sometimes you really need to just take your shoes off and go for a walk on the beach. And sometimes we need that balance of autonomy. Maybe, sometimes we need to go for a walk alone in nature and connect with Mother Earth, connect with the trees, with the birds and the animals that show up, and sit and meditate for a little bit. So yeah, that is just kind of an intro to how conscious love leads to awakening. I hope that was helpful. Namaste.